Okay, council members. Okay, I've got my mic on. Council members in earshot, let's roll. No, and they. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the February 21st meeting of the Reno City Council. At this time, we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think it only appropriate that the entire Finance Department stand up and lead us in the pledge. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Now take the roll.
Yes. Madam Vice Mayor Breckus.
Here.
Dewar.
Here.
Delgado. McKenzie. Jardine.
Here.
Bobzien. Shivi. Absent at this time. Madam Vice Mayor, you do have a quorum of the Reno City Council.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will move into general public comment. Again, this is general public comment, limited to 3 minutes. If you have any materials, please give them to the clerk. Madam Clerk.
Madam Vice Mayor, our first public comment is from Johnny Madrid Lawrence, followed by Nathan Daniel.
Hello, Council and everybody in Reno. My name is Johnny Madrid Lawrence. This is Iris Rose. Question is I'm sure everybody except for in the back are familiar with me, Mr. Hall. On the 26th of October, I was abused by the police. I tried to explain to them it's on video. They gave me a video of being shoved into my 2005 Dodge Magnum that I have parked out there for 3 years taking pictures and never had a problem because it's a show car. But yet this particular day, I'm abused by your police officers. I go upstairs to get a copy of the video. They tell me they no longer have that video because the case is dismissed. The case wasn't dismissed, but they're telling me it is. I'm not sure if it's corruption still all the way up and down. I know it's in Washington. I'm familiar with it being here. I've been fighting for 3 years. When I came to Reno, I knew Reno was a very nice place to come to. Heard about it in Vegas. When I got here, I was lied on by Jamie Crane and Sean Swartz. And,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
excuse me, it's my 3 minutes, okay? I still knew Reno was good, okay? But I see there is a lot of corruption here from the police, the mayor, Carl Hall. I'm wondering, I cannot get anybody to investigate this. Well, it's a lie. So my question on a comment is do we enjoy police brutality if it's not us that's involved? If it's somebody else, are we too high on a level to investigate this because we feel that they're an annoyance to us because they are a native citizen, 100% disabled veteran, served our country? I'm sure some of your police officers are the same. I truly respect the law, okay? Growing up, I never knew the law. I was uninformed about the law. Here recently, since I moved to Reno, though, I'm getting pretty good, huh, Carl? Getting pretty good, huh? From Reno. Believe me, my fight's not over. It's not over. The day that they thought my case was dismissed in the Ninth Circuit, on the 25th, the 26th, I was manhandled by the police, taking pictures of my show car to send out to people. That wasn't a good day for some. It cost me $500 in 24 hours to get that show car back out of storage. Anybody else ever paid that much? No. That's a lot of money. What I'm asking you for, the council, Ms. Mayor is not here, and I know she really enjoys the Olympics because I've seen her on her Facebook page or whatever that was complimenting the skier. But yet, We have no help for citizens who are abused. Sure, I'm a little loud. I stick out sometimes. It's just the way it is. I'm sorry. I'm not a mean, I'm not a violent, I'm not a threatful person, okay? But I do like the Constitution, and I believe I have rights if I'm allowed to get them, but nobody wants to break them off for me, okay? So I'm hoping the council up here with the mayor that anybody can get back and find out where this video went that they supposedly do not have no more, that they shoved me in the back of my car saying I jumped in my car. Okay, I don't know, folks. I know I'm not as high on a level as you are, but I do love living in Reno, okay? If you all want to run me out, continue trying. I think that's what you're trying, okay?
Thank you
I
very
don't know.
much. Madam Clerk?
Nathan Daniel, followed by Theodore Danielski.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council, Madam Manager. My name is Nathan Daniel. I'm the Executive Director of Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation, which is a nonprofit here in Reno that works to support the parks here in Truckee Meadows. I also serve on the Recreation and Parks Commission, and I'm here to let you know that last evening that body endorsed a letter in support of our parks to you. I'm not going to read it today. Instead, I delivered it to the clerk to be added into the record if you so desire. Essentially, the letter says that over the past 10 years or 9 years since the recession, park funding has been decreased by half. Right now, the full-time equivalents that work at the Parks Department are 3.5 for every 100 acres. The level adopted by the City Council is 7.5. So we are literally at half the number of staff we need in order to maintain our maintenance standard. I'm well aware of the fact that the city does not have extra money floating around, but as you consider the budget this year, I'd just like you to consider the fact that parks are essential for the quality of life here in Reno. The Reimagine Reno plan states that quite clearly, that the citizens here believe in parks, they believe in recreation, they believe in spending time outside. That's one of the things we really care about here. And unfortunately, we are just simply not investing in our parks. Another reason why I'm not going to read the record or the letter today is because I just sent the council members an email a few minutes ago just stating that as representing the Parks Foundation, we are going to be starting our annual campaign just to give citizens of Reno a chance to write emails to you endorsing a very similar letter. So it comes from a citizen, and hopefully, I'm sorry about your inboxes, but you'll be getting some emails soon that are from citizens of Reno just stating that they too believe that we need to reinvest in our parks. And so on Friday, you'll be hearing a presentation from Director Bass, and in that he has, he has above base requests. I'd like you to consider very much, I know you won't be able to fund all of them, that's just not possible, but some of the top priority suggestions that you have, I think are very good suggestions. So does the Recreation and Parks Commission, and that's it. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Theodore Danielski, followed by Wilbur Orell Nagaro.
Good afternoon. I'm here just to make a statement about something that's going on here lately over in our neighborhood. I live over on Stardust Street off of Elgin, and there's a outside entity that's coming in and buying up apartments or complexes all through there, and then they're actually having people kicking people out in a way. And I just wanted to put a face on the situation. I know that there have been other people from that particular area that have come down here and probably talked to you about it. And I don't know what can be done about that. About it's creating a bottleneck in the rental market, though, because we're given 30 days, and most of the waiting lists are, longer than that. They're talking about 90 days and up to a couple of years in some of them that I've talked to. But anyway, like I said, I'm a senior citizen, and I'm also a veteran, and basically, I don't want to add to the homeless population in Reno, and I'm pretty sure that I know that's a pretty big issue with y'all here in Reno. wanted to make my statement that way.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty, you all
Thank
have a
you.
good day.
You as well. Madam Clerk?
Wilbur Orell Nogaro, followed by Jeffrey Nelson.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet. This is my first time. Embarrassing. I'm gonna speak on my family and same situation where we live at apartment complex. Unprofessional. They did not give us 30. They bought the property like let's say on the 1st, and they gave us notice on the 6th, and we paid our rent ahead of time. They didn't give us proof of that we paid our rent, and they didn't give us 90 days or I think 60 days notice for us we can find housing, and they're not gonna give us lenience fee, trying to see if we can get back pay on that. Also, I don't know if we can sue them or we can get back pay on them because we had a lot paying rent and it was locked. Now, it's hard for me because I take care of my mom, my auntie, for 12 years, diabetic. I'm nonprofit. I believe that it's not about the money, it's about family. And I, as a man, I lost a lot in my opportunities because I'm well educated. I'm trying my best. I go into panics. I have a panic attack. I have high blood pressures because my situation. I'm trying to get my mom on disability. I'm trying to get my auntie so I can be an in-house caretaker. My stress is above high level. I have to work a job. I lost a lot of opportunities. A mechanic, electrician. I worked as an apprentice at a TV station 10 months. I'm well educated. I know my stuff. I just don't believe that it takes money to move the world around. It just takes a good, Geo's passion. Give everyone optimistic support. I appreciate the help the state gives us with food and all that stuff and food banks. It's just that they were very unprofessional. Gave a notice on the 6th. They should have gave us a notice like on the 31st or before they bought it and given us like 90 days or so. And my auntie's on this disabled. My mom I'm getting on her disability, glaucoma, and they have to walk down and upstairs. And now I have to find a place, me being a head of household, and I'm stressing right now. And the waiting list is big, like they said. I'm trying to put a face out there for my family and everybody that lives there. I'm bilingual. Sorry about that. I'm not much of a person that likes to speak up in front. I'm more of the slap my cheeks, turn around, keep going forward. I just keep getting abused and I can't take it anymore. I flip out, yeah. You could say I go into a loony bin. Yeah, that's me. But all the stress is over my head. As the man of the house, I have to keep over my family. And just because the apartment complex bought them out, they did not give us 90 days, 30 days, and I don't know if they're gonna give us back pay or anything for us to find a place that's cheaper. The 2 bedrooms are gonna be hard to find, especially for the price range. I'm also speaking on my mom's behalf, what she has filled out, and also everybody else that's gonna come before me, it's for the apartment complex. It's hard and difficult. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to also help him out and everybody else around me. I care more about others than I care about myself. And I should be, thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
Jeffrey Nelson, followed by Mora Robles Orejo.
Thank you. He pretty much said it good. I'm the senior person in our complex. I live there the longest. I've come with my friends here today. I'm addressing a situation that seems troublesome. It's not getting any better. I think we need to care for the core of its peoples in Reno instead of catering to outsiders that are coming here. In some cases, they're buying up property sight unseen from what I'm hearing. It's basically, we were put notices on our door. 30 days isn't enough. And in most cases, the waiting list far surpass that out there. I'm a person that's always been about people over profits. If we don't continue to address that, you're gonna have more people like us in here. It's just not a growing, the housing crisis and crunch is it's happening. I spend 5-6 hours a day with them driving around only to get shown, you'll be on a waiting list, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't help you when you only have 30 days. The way they did it was kind of cowardly fashion, the way they left notice on our door. They didn't speak to us. They didn't knock on the door. They left it and disappeared. I mean, big business, I'm not against that, but at the same time, look at the people, though, that live there. Some 5 years, some 10, me 13 years. sure, I have good rental history, but if there's not places and placement for me, where do I go? I mean, it's a step backwards if I'm going to a motel. I love my neighborhood. Stardust it's got great potential. It's got a view of the mountains to the right, the cityscape to the left. You're seeing a lot of pain in some of the people that are up here because it's tough out there. It's tough. I mean, whether you're young or old, out there looking right now, I'm just not getting the answers, and people aren't shy to show me to the door. If you don't have the money, the rent, which is in some cases 30 to 40% higher than what we're paying now, there's always going to be someone out there that's going to pay that, and that kind of leaves us. It's a troubled. It should be your destiny and destination to find placement for the people here, especially the people that are locals or something. We have to care about them, young and old, rich or poor, the ill, the hospice. It's something that needs to be addressed. You know, I mean, I wish I was on that side of the desk. I'd be, but I'm on the other side looking. Other than that, you pretty much know what's going on. I'm sure you keep up with things, but it's widespread. I'm going to all different neighborhoods. They're buying up places. The rents are being, what was once 600 is 900 to 1,000. Even the common 9 to 5, or how do they especially in his case, caring for his family. It's just, it's a lot to, it's something that needs to be addressed and soon. I mean, again, I'm not against growth though, but the way that they're doing it is, it's bothersome and it's wrong. We're being shown I'm sure when the day comes and we have to leave, they're not offering us any kind of compensatory type of refund or move fees or even someone that's helping us. We're getting zero help out there. So we come today to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very well said. Madam Clerk?
Madam Vice Mayor, our last public comment is from Imora Robles Orejo.
That's my mom. Just want to represent and just wanted to say that this is off topic, but I have a DUI more than 4 years ago. I'm going to bring that to attention for the simple reason. By Savers, or I could say right there on 7th.
Could I stop you for just a second? We can't allow somebody who's not here to speak on behalf of somebody else, but if we could get somebody from staff
To translate.
that could go out and make sure to collect these individuals' information and also provide them any relocation information that we have and assistance that we have available to us. And then also, we'll have staff meet with you.
Yeah, I've been trying to do my best to help out others because I don't care about myself. I'm more about
Thank you very much.
and my family.
Thank you very much.
Madam Vice Mayor, I have no further general public comment today.
Thank you very much.
With that, our next item is approval of the agenda.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. At this time, we will turn it over to presentations. B1, staff report, presentation, discussion, and potential direction to staff regarding fiscal status, including operations and capital needs for the city of Reno.
Madam Vice Mayor, if I could just start this off for the record, Saber Newby, City Manager. So one of the requests that I heard from council upon taking this position was that you wanted more in-depth information on the budget, and you wanted more interaction earlier on your budget process. So with that in mind, we scheduled the meeting today and the meeting on Friday to begin that dialogue. I recognize that it's earlier in the budget season than typically we would have started this discussion, but today's presentation is intended to be a high-level view of our revenues and expenditures, as well as historical patterns. We're also going to discuss at a high level our PCR's program change requests from the departments. As you'll see in the presentation, much of our financial situation is inherited. It comes from a time before any of you were on this council, and I don't expect, just as it wasn't created overnight, for us to solve it overnight either. But I think that we have a number of things on our side. I think we have an active council of really caring and involved folks. I think we have some of the most dedicated workers in the entire region who constantly go above and beyond every day. And I think we have a lot of opportunities with our changing environment here and some of the things that we can do. So I just wanted to kick it off and give it a little bit of context for why we're here and what we hope to gain and talk about today. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Debbie Lochner. She is our new finance director, and she will be giving the presentation today, no doubt with a lot of help from her friends in finance as well. So I'll turn it over to her.
All right. Good afternoon. So today we're going to give you a fiscal overview. We're going to talk a little bit about balanced budget strategies, some of, at a very high level, the additional needs, the program change requests that have come from the departments as we've talked with them about their budget needs. Talk about our capital improvement program and also give you a little bit of a debt overview. So we'll start with our fiscal overview. So this slide really is to show a history of our fund balance. So from the guiding principles that were approved by the council by resolution in 2014, we have a general fund balance goal to be between 7 and 8.3% of the prior year's expenditures. So this just gives you an idea of where we are. The red line is the percent of the prior year operating expenditures, and the blue line is really where we are in the fund balance. So as we're trying to make sure that blue line and red line are closer together, I would say that, personally, as you look at it from being in this profession for a long time, 7 to 8.3% is not an adequate reserve, but that's the goal we have right now. So we wanted to give you a picture of what our revenues and expenditures are doing. As you can see, it shows a structural imbalance. We took out the one-time monies, grant monies, sales of property, those kinds of things, use of fund balance, because as you know, we are required to pass a balanced budget every year. How we do that and how we balance that budget has taken various different roads over the years, but we do have a structural imbalance between our revenues and expenditures, and that's really what this graph shows. We also wanted to give you an idea of how our employee costs are growing while our services and supplies that support our employees really are remaining flat. So we are essentially cutting our budget every year to maintain our the costs of our employees, which are so as you look at the out years, we project that the salaries and benefits for employees increase around 5% a year. That's kind of historical average. And as you can see, the services and supplies remain steady, so any increase in revenues really are going to pay for that growth in expenditures. So we're going to talk a little bit about our 17-18 budget. So on the initial pass at our 17-18 budget, we had a $5.5 million deficit. And I'll get to how we balanced the budget in a minute, but that was where we were initially. Where we are right now, we're still estimating about a $322,000 deficit to get through the end of this year. So as you can see, our revenues have come in greater, but we've also had some additional expenses that were more than what we originally anticipated. So to balance our budget, in order to pass a balanced budget, we did a variety of things. We reduced our fleet, what we pay for fleet services. We added in a salary savings component, so that is every year there's a certain amount of vacancies that happen throughout an organization of this size, and we estimated it was going to be at least $500,000 for the 17-18 fiscal year. We also continued to fund both workers' comp and our other post-employment benefits, retiree medical benefits, at the fiscal year 16, 17 levels. We reduced some funding for miscellaneous expenses and severance costs. And then we also did an analysis to see what we typically save in services and supplies. So we put that in as an expected savings. And we reduced our contingency stabilization fund funding, as well as reduced our fund balance to 7% at the time of what our prior year expenditures were. This was, of course, developed before we did the audit. So as you'll see on the next slide, to balance the $322,000 that we still have to balance, we have some additional CIP requests that came in that we felt should be funded this year and could be funded this year. They're a high-level need. In addition to that, we have analyzed and come up with some additional salary savings, some additional services and supply savings that we feel are going to be realized. And as a result of the audit, we actually had some additional fund balance. So, there's always some money turned back at the end of the year. And when we audited, this would be use of one-time fund balance to keep us at 8.3%, not the 7% we originally had in the budget. So for fiscal year 18-19, our total general fund estimated revenues are $184.5 million. This just shows kind of a breakdown of where those revenues come from. Our primary revenue sources are going to be property taxes and the consolidated tax. Tax revenues are really the largest support for your general fund. But as you'll see, our estimated expenditures are $190 million. So again, we have a structural deficit. This gives you a breakdown of where those overall expenditures are. We also just show, in total, the public safety versus other operating budget. Our public safety does take 69% of our overall budget. So again, we come down to the numbers, and the bottom line is we have a $5.5 million deficit. So we're starting to see a little bit of a pattern here of a structural deficit that we need to cure. And like our city manager said, we don't expect that necessarily to happen in 1 year because we don't want to decimate the organization, but we do want to have a balanced budget. And so it's going to take some additional work on our part to get there. We do have some non-discretionary program change requests that we feel need to be and are included in these numbers. There are things we really don't have control over. So there are retirement payouts. So on the one time, most of that is severance pay or retirement payouts, which we are obligated to pay when people leave the organization. We also have a retirement of a software, so not just people. That is going to cost some one-time money, and an upgrade of the Microsoft Office product. Those are one-time funds that need to be invested in the organization. In addition to that, there's some annual costs that are, it's really just increases in contracted costs that we are obligated to pay, so we felt that there is really no discretion on these particular program change requests. So the way we look at, and this is one possible balanced budgeting idea put together by the finance department. So we feel that we have to fund the non-discretionary program change requests. We feel that we can support an addition, $500,000 in salary savings. We can continue to fund workers' comp and OPEB, the retiree medical, at the fiscal year 16-17 levels. That just means we are not making progress on those particular liabilities, but we're not losing, a lot of places pay as you go. So we're still funding it, just not at the level we should be. And then there's a potential for department reductions. There's also the use of one-time fund balance. Again, this is additional. When you do the calculation of what your fund balance is that you are required to have, over the prior year's expenditures. This gets us to the 7%, not the 8.3. So one thing we do not have on here that's also a potential budget balancing is reducing the funding to the contingency reserve as well, which is what we did last year, but that's again, last year it was $1.1 million, we reduced it. We don't have that on that list, but that is again a potential to, when we're looking at department reductions versus not funding the stabilization reserve at the total level that we want to fund it at. So talking a little bit about strategies for balancing the budget, historically, the city of Reno has balanced their general fund budget by using fund balance in excess of 7%, reducing funding for risk programs. That's when they're have in their fund balance more than they need, as has been determined by, we do actuarial studies to make sure what we should have in there. You can keep the funding flat for workers' comp, but again, we're not making any progress on reducing the liability for the heart-lung issues. You can keep funding like the motor vehicle rentals and other things. We can keep those flat, but it does hamper your services to the community when you're not allowed to spend the money at the level you really should be for certain things. We can continue to build in anticipated salary savings, which is a good idea, because with an organization this size, you do have salary savings every year. But we also have a program where we allow our safety units to overhire, so the amount of salary savings is reduced overall, because typically you get a lot of your salary savings from your largest work groups. You can continue to build in anticipated service and supply savings. That's not necessarily a good idea, because you really are looking at what supplies and services do you need to provide the community's service that we've told you we're going to provide. So those really are how staff has come together and said, we really need this amount of money to provide that service. We can continue to reduce the contingency funding, which we've done in the past we've reduced it by $1.1 million. And then using one-time funds, which again is not a great way to balance your operating money, but your operating, you want to make sure that you're using ongoing revenue to pay for your ongoing costs. And that is one of the guiding principles in the budget guiding principles. So there's a couple different ways to look at as you're reducing some budget reduction strategies. When you look at departments, you can do across-the-board percentage reductions, which are not necessarily a good idea. You have some very small departments that might not be able to absorb their, 5%, 10%, whatever it is that is determined needs to be cut. You can do reductions by determining how much that department, what percentage of that department is in the general fund, and then have them reduce according to their percentage of the general fund. You can reduce services to the community for things that are nice to haves versus the things that you really absolutely have to have. And you can look at your positions as so having a position review committee would help. As you are looking to rehire positions, you can be more strategic about, is that the position you need? Is it something else you need to continue providing those services? So having that kind of a review in place can help looking strategically across the whole organization. As we receive one-time resources, we want to make sure that if you have savings at the end of the year, so this is ongoing expenses that weren't spent, you have a variety of things you can do with those. You can increase your funding to pay your liabilities and your fund balances to get appropriate levels there. You can spend them on one-time capital projects, and you can also fund some of the one-time department requests. In addition, when you have one-time revenue from property sales, that really should be spent on a capital project of some sort. So just to talk a little high level on program change requests. To give you an idea of the magnitude of the needs of the organization, as you can see, the general fund, which we just said has a $5.5 million hole, also has requests for almost $9.3 million of additional needs throughout the organization. The entire organization has put in almost $10.8 million in requests for additional funding for their programs. We wanted to show you kind of what that means staffing-wise. In total, the $10.75 million total requests equates to 59 people. Again, that's an ongoing expenditure that gets paid every year, and we need to be really careful on how we add ongoing costs to the organization until we've kind of solved our problem. And for the general fund, $9.3 million equated to almost 54 people, plus other things. That's just the FTEs involved. So talk a little bit about our capital improvement program. So the capital improvement plan really just tells us how we're going to do major maintenance and construction of city facilities and infrastructure. It is a critical component of our budget. It is also, as most agencies throughout the nation, there is deferred maintenance that needs to be addressed. The longer you defer the maintenance, the more costly it is to fix it. So we want to, try to not be in a continual mode of deferring our maintenance. We did have a CIP committee meeting, and they met to review the fiscal year 18-19 projects and provided a recommendations of the projects to be funded. So this shows the requested projects. As you can see, for fiscal year 18-19, there is $117.4 million of requested projects, and the committee recommended $54.6 million. The bulk of that really is, of what's been recommended by the committee, really is in the sewer system. And you can see general capital projects, which are the projects funded by the general fund, is only about $1.6 million, and the requests were almost $50.5 million. So we're really not funding what we need to with the general fund. We just don't have the capacity to fund the needs. This is, so as we look at the CIP funds and the general fund transfer, I talked earlier about funding $1.1 million of capital needs with the current 17-18 budget. So this lists what those are. They really are critical needs for the organization, and so this kind of outlines what those particular critical needs are, and then you can see what the committee recommended and how it total for these particular projects is about $2.7 million. So we also wanted to show you the CDBG projects that have been recommended by the committee, and again, some additional needs that we think need to be funded now. One thing, the reason why I wanted to highlight CDBG is because this is one of the funding sources that is on the chopping block at the federal level. We do rely on it for ADA improvements, and that funding could go away. So we wanted to just highlight, what's getting paid for through those funds, and let you know that that's in jeopardy. And if that doesn't come through, we're going to have to find another way to fund these needed improvements, because they are, ADA improvements are very much needed pretty much everywhere. We also wanted to give you an overview of how much in the general fund, how much has been funded versus requested over the years. As you can see, we simply are not funding at the level we should be funding. We're doing what we can afford, but it's not adequate to maintain our current infrastructure, let alone new infrastructure as it comes on with new construction. The last piece we wanted to talk to you about was to give you an overall overview of our debt. So this particular slide shows what the various uses of debt were over time. As you can see, our largest debt is the retrack and the event center, followed by sewer. And I can see sewer has a large infrastructure, and they're trying not to use as much debt financing as they maintain their infrastructure. So we're in a mode of paying down. As you can see here, the high of our debt was $648 million in 2009, and we've been steadily paying that down. And I can't speak to whether I'm sure we've done some refinancing and saved some money that way as well. But you can see that the debt position is going down. So with that, we have answer any questions you might have.
Councilwoman Breckus? Mayor. Excuse me. The slide about the, I can't remember which one it was. It showed the critical ones, I think, in this budget year. It was slide number, let's see. I think it showed the Edison Way. Yeah, it was slide number 16. It shows the Edison Way fire fleet lease of $54,000. Why a jump there? I thought we've been budgeting that all along. And did that contract get renegotiated or something? Or did it have a balloon? What's going on with that?
For the record, Jill Olson, Finance. There was an actual expansion of the amount of room they are using over at that facility, which increased the total rent.
Yeah, I don't recall, and that's kind of a pet issue to me that I'd like to bring up a little bit more is administrative authority to renew or re-engineer leases. I think that we have a lot of ongoing leases that kind of autopilot, and I don't recall that one coming to us.
It's my understanding that it's coming to council. We just put it in here as a placeholder.
Coming to
so that we
council,
knew
okay.
If it happens,
That's
we need the
fine.
money.
I just, I hope that leases are going to be coming to council more often. And then the other question was on the one-time capital. Another fire question is, are we going to be, what requests are being recommended on capital purchases for fire rigs and the replacement program that we've, adopted for them?
For the record, Jill Olson. Currently, we have $300,000 budgeted for fire capital.
Okay, so that's, what's that going to get us?
Chief can probably address that the best.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dave Cochran, Reno Fire Chief. So the $300,000 is the capital allocation that is currently on the table. That will not buy us anything in terms of apparatus.
Won't get us a rig this year?
It will not. What we're proposing, what we intend to bring to council, we've discussed it, I know, with some of you, and we have not brought it to council formally yet, is a financing program to incur some medium-term debt to undertake a comprehensive replacement program. That $300,000 would be the fire department's commitment to that program. But by itself, that $300,000 is not enough to buy an apparatus.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's another discussion because that's debt and that's a hard place to go, but I wanted to know what was on for you all. And that's all the questions I have. I think it was a good presentation. It was very honest and forthright, so I appreciate that. I do think that the position control idea is really critical. And so those controls are important. But, there's not a lot of latitude here for us, so thank you.
All right, Councilman Bobzien, anything? Councilman Delgado?
I was just talking off the side here with the city manager. If you can, I guess maybe bring it back to me. Now, you went through the entire presentation, but looking for a little bit more with respect to latitude. I know we're just struggling just to make it balance, but I know several of us up here on the dais are looking for, as the overall growth is still taking place, we're seeing so much growth. It's going back to, is the only opportunity for maybe new personnel, maybe related to public safety, et cetera, is that us just dip into our savings? I mean, is that kind of where we're looking at even furthermore? I think just these general bigger topics is kind of what I wanted to hopefully hear from staff. I mean, where do the opportunities lie outside of moving money from department to department, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, so week 2 on the job.
Welcome.
I don't see any real latitude for ongoing costs unless we make some cut somewhere else at this point. We do show, I mean, the last 2 years, just when we roll up the numbers, it's $5.5 million that we have to then figure out how to balance our budget. So overall, as we're looking at the organization, we need to be strategic in how we put positions back into the organization. As you rebuild coming out of the recession, you have to be really diligent in, what are the biggest needs for the entire organization, not one section of the organization, and how we deliver service to the entire community. And so those are discussions really that we're having with the city manager and hopefully with this body as we go forward, is what's the best strategy for the entire organization as we move forward. I don't see a lot of latitude, but again, if the council has a desire that they want to see something funded, then we have to look at how we will make that happen and provide you with an honest answer of what the consequences would be.
If I could jump in there too, I mean, there's 2 sides to this, right? There's the expense side and the revenue side, and I think we have opportunities on both. With the position review committee, I'm really hoping that we'll be able to really think, there's that book, Don't Work Harder, Work Smarter, and I think that that's what we need to do as an organization. This budget is your budget. You guys need to tell us what your priorities are, and we can make that happen. We just wanted to let you know some of the realities that we're working with. But if you direct us to make changes, to add positions in certain areas, then we'll make it happen. We just need to have an honest conversation about what we may need to give up in order to get there for you. So this is really, again, a high level, only the beginning of the discussion. And we understand that it will, again, like I said in my opening comments, we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. Hopefully, we'll see some revenue growth in the next couple of years. Miraculously, maybe the Nevada legislature will change something about the antiquated property tax system. We can always hope. So there's a lot of things in flux here, but I'm optimistic that we can make lemonade out of lemons, I think.
Councilman, you have anything else?
Okay.
I mean, generally for me, I think that's kind of where I am. Our staff works so hard, right? And I know they need support. All the departments need support. Every single department adds value, so much value to everything that we do. It's going to be interesting hearing from my colleagues here and just from the staff in terms of what becomes a priority for all of us in order to deal with the growing pains that we're all in the middle of, knowing that we're still really hamstrung in terms of that revenue that's coming in. So I'm just looking for ideas and just kind of, that's ultimately what we're dealing with. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thanks so much. Vice Mayor Jordan.
Thank you very much. Slide number 9 has the initial budget balancing sheet with a deficit of 5.5 million. If you were to take this sheet, snapshot it a year ago, what did that number look like? 5.5 million last year? So we're status quo. We're not making a whole lot of headway, but we're not sinking deeper into.
I think the number's
Okay.
about $3,000 different from when we balanced 17-18 versus what the preliminary 18-19 deficit is.
Okay. Does this 5.5 take into consideration the hit we take from the AT&T? That'll be on the revenue side.
That's not in here yet.
Because this is, yeah, we have that to look forward to. Okay, I was just trying to get a comparable snapshot. So literally, it's a $3,000 difference from 16-17 versus 17-18.
Yeah, so you can see it's 17-18 to 18-19. I don't have the 16-17, and I'll have to get that for you, where we were when we rolled up the numbers for 16-17. But for 17-18 and for 18-19, it's $3,000 difference.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I was just going to add on the AT&T refund, we are still waiting to hear back from the state. The refund was approved. However, there's a structuring of the repayment. It's looking like, last we heard anyway, although we haven't gotten official confirmation that a deal has been inked between the state and AT&T, but last we heard it would be an 18-month payback. And it would begin with our fiscal year in July, so that's good news. It gives us time to plan for
July is
it.
good news, 18 months, not so much.
Right, well, we were hoping for longer, but 18 months is not too bad when you consider they could have asked for it in one lump sum. Unfortunately, the way that the state operates with the C-tax, we aren't going to be able to really know how much is being deducted from our C-tax payments on any given month. We'll just see whatever it is that they distribute to us. So that's a little bit of a frustration for us, but it just plays into how complex the C-tax formula is. The good news on that, if there is any, is that AT&T some time ago stopped taking sales tax on the materials that they were bringing to Reno and then shipping elsewhere. So that means one of the things that we were afraid of is that we would have the double whammy of having to pay back the C-tax and then also having the ongoing payment being reduced because those items weren't being taxed again. So if there is some good news, it's that they've already stopped that. So whatever hit we've seen from those ongoing taxes not coming in, we've already seen happen. So there's no double whammy, there's only a single whammy.
Councilwoman Dewar.
Yeah, thank you. First, a big shout out to Sabra, our city manager, because this was in fact one of the things that I asked her in our very first meeting and had been asking since I got elected, was that we start earlier, because it gives us more time to mentally process what we have to work with and also help the team come up with new ideas, anything new, any ways that we can help in terms of modifying our own requests to helping look for areas to increase revenues, the whole packet. It makes us partners, and I'd much rather be a partner than throwing darts at the budget on May when we're supposed to approve the budget in May. I mean, it's a whole different role, and I really appreciate that. I just wanted to go through a couple of slides again, if we could. And the first one was was item, I guess that was 6 or 4. If you could just run through these, a couple of them. So in this slide, one thing is good news is that at least the ending fund balance is the same as FY06. So while we've had less and we've had more, or at least it's something that replicates something that was in a year that was a high. Not that it's good. If you could go to the next one. An observation here, and this is something we realized at Tumwa, the structural imbalance that you're talking about. Every single day, we're bringing, every single year, since the last 5 years, 6 years, we're bringing in less money than we're spending. So we just can't continue that way. Now, at Tumwa, we had the ability to increase rates so that at the point that we realized this, we could get out ahead of it and we could start increasing rates before it was a crisis. Well, here, it already is a crisis, and we're already having to dig into our reserves every year just to balance the budget. So, I mean, this is just no good, right? We all know this. This is bad. On the next page, this was very interesting to me because what you show here is since 2013, just the employee salaries and benefits costs is the only thing that's gone up in all these years. Everything else virtually flat. I mean, that's building space, vehicles, services and supplies, everything. And so that's remarkable right there. I mean, that tells the story that we are very driven by our employees, and we've put the money where we get the most bang, which is our employees. So I think that's a really good news story. I wanted to just jump over to a few more slides, quite a few more slides, over to, got it circled here, so let me get it. Over to, I guess this is page 23. And 23 and 24, so on 23, you have the PCR, so that would incorporate any new employees and anything to support those employees, whether it's vehicles or pens and pencils or projects that those employees are working on, right, are embedded here. And we can see the big impacts, police and fire, the next big impacts, public works and parks, and the other big impact, capital improvement projects, which should always, probably should be bigger than police and fire. I mean, for a city our size, should be a much bigger number there. And if you turn the next page, this is where the actual new employees, I guess these are proposed, Madam Manager. So these aren't approved, but I think this is, since employees is really where it's at, where we spend 85% of our budget, which is the thing that gets our work done. On this page, it shows 16 for police, 17 for fire. In contrast, we have 1 for human resources. And so what I wanted to say at this point is that given our last council meeting, where we pledged to do better, where we talked about our procedures, where we're trying to kind of reinvent the culture at our workplace, to strive for that excellence, to lose the fear, to be able to just buckle down and go to work. It may be, I have noted a very big shortage in our HR department. It seems to me, and I don't know the real answer here, it seems to me there are only 2 positions that do HR. Most of the people are like process payroll, a couple of them, or do benefits or something like that. So, Madam Manager, this is just an area I would like you to just take a look at. It could be that one's an employee and maybe you get some outsourced contractual resources that help in this area. And maybe you're already thinking about that. But I really would like to see this a year that we turn around our city and we get back to kind of regular operating order, and we reassure our employees, we focus on training, and those kind of things. And to get that done, I think we're going to need to put a little money in the budget. So just something to think about right at this point. And then the positions that are in public works, parks, dispatch, I would just, we may need round 2, but I would just like to, I kind of know what police officers and fire officers do, what a city attorney does, et cetera, but it would be informative to me and maybe the others on what these couple departments are thinking about, or are these new projects, or trying to get a handle on something. It would just, if we could come back to that at some point later. And one final request for me would be, you have divided this budget up in a very understandable way, and I really appreciate that. What I would like also is probably a missing page, and maybe I just missed it, but it's kind of a chart that kind of puts it all together, that shows all the revenue funds and all the expenditure funds kind of on one big chart. I mean, you can't put it on PowerPoint, but I know we're not seeing the whole picture when we just see general fund, or we just look at a snapshot on capital, that kind of thing. And maybe just later as we get down the process, just a big worksheet that shows me that. I just want to get the whole budget in my head on, to the extent I can on one big piece of paper, without a whole bunch of detail, but enough detail to understand the moving parts. And then finally, on the revenue side, it's already been brought up about our antiquated property tax structure. I was at one time, especially when Senator Ratty got her bill passed last session to look at depreciation, that was a resolution, need another resolution, then need to go to vote of the people. That's a long process. And I think we should do everything we can to support that process. I just don't know if it's a complete win. I don't know where we'll end up. So one idea that I would like to just pose at this time, early in this budget process, and something for our legislative people to think about, we just had heard the Stonegate proposal, and we approved it. And one of the things that those lobbyists and those people working on that project proposed was that they would go down to the legislature and talk about, is there a way that we could have the same authority that counties have in enacting a fire district? So they have a separate ability to stand up and have a separate revenue source that doesn't come out of their general fund. It's worth exploring. Maybe DOA, dead on arrival, but I at least think it's a conversation worth having. And it may, over time, not year one, we don't suddenly raise a new tax and fund our whole fire department off of that. But maybe if something like that was possible, over a period of time, there could be a transition from a major support on our general fund for fire to something like that. Now, maybe I'm just naive and whistling in the breeze and it's never going to happen. But I always say, never say die. It's at least worth a conversation. And I would love to see it, another way to build the revenue so that we could, in fact, balance this budget. So thanks for letting me share all my ideas and first glance, and thanks for putting today and I guess Friday, too, together.
Thank you. Councilmember McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a couple of questions. On your slide on page 6, you show the employee costs going up 5% a year over term. I don't recall any of the collective bargaining agreements having a 5% increase in them.
So that's in total salaries and benefits. So as you know, your retirement benefits go up every year. Healthcare costs increase every year. There's merit increases throughout the organization that take a piece of that. So it's not just the collective bargaining agreements in their salary component. There's other components associated with that.
Okay, I don't see how we talk about a smooth 5% increase based upon those, because we haven't seen a PERS increase for the last couple of years. The healthcare costs, we didn't see an increase last year. Most of the other stuff increases based upon salary. So if your salary goes up, then the amount you're paying into it goes up. So if you're running on a 3% increase on average, your total cost, unless you add employees or have drastic increases in salary for certain employees in that you have a higher than what your collective increase is. On slide 12, you did a projection on C-tax and property tax. What did you base your estimates on those on?
For the record, Jill Wilson. We are estimating a 3.5% increase in property taxes. That could go up after we get a better idea. We'll get the final assessed valuation figures.
3.5%?
Mm-hmm. Because of the cap.
Right.
But-
The cap
we're
gives you
expecting
3 on
new growth.
residential and 7 on commercial.
8 on commercial, and it's kind of a rolling average. And then the CPI is 2.1% that they're using. So these are just our early numbers until we can get the final assessed valuation numbers from the county.
So we don't actually know what our property taxes increase is going to be, but what did we use for an estimation for escalation on C-tax?
For C-tax, we have included a 4% additional escalation for 18-19 on top of this
So
year's
pretty
actual.
conservative estimation on our revenues.
Right now, we're about 6% above
Right.
where we were.
And then on 28, we've got, on slide 28, we've got an additional $850,000 for this parking garage over here. What are we looking at there? That we got the elevators done this year. We did the floors. What's the additional $850,000 on that?
For the record, John Flansburgh, Public Works Director. So the 650 is for the roof replacement, so the top deck. We feel that that's very important as we are seeing more stress on the parking in that parking garage, especially during our council events and other things when we have a lot of people here. If we can't get the roof completed, we won't be able to park folks up on top. So that's critical. And then A couple $100,000 would be to continue some of the additional deck, the selective removal and replacement of the decks that we did on floors 1 and 2.
How much of the $2 million we dedicated to this garage have we got left? Have we put $2 million into it already?
I'll have to get back to you on the exact numbers of what we spent, but I know that obviously the work that we've done to date with including the elevators, but I'll double check and
'Cause I
report
know
that back on Friday.
That we committed a large portion of our surplus a few years ago to that parking garage, and if I remember right, it was close to $2 million. Chief Cochran, you need 14 guys to man our 2 fire stations?
Dave Cochran, Fire Chief. You're referring to Station 7 and Station 19, the two that
Right.
currently have 2 people?
Right.
So we would need 15 people to bring those up to 4 people in each station.
You need 14 more people? 15 more people?
Yeah. Because we staff to 12 people, which is 4 per shift, 3 shifts, and then 1 floater for each shift to cover sick, vacation, normal vacancies.
So that's 13 additional.
No, 1 per shift, 1 floater per shift.
1 floater per shift.
Per shift. So 5 people per shift to cover a position.
And then you subtract out what's already the 2-person medical crew that's already there?
No, that's additional that you need that's additional that we'll need to man those departments.
Right, so to fill 4 vacancies, 2 in each station, would be 15 people, right?
Okay. And then, is our excess hire keeping up with your rate of retirement?
We are treading water, yes. And I always I'm trying to shift away from excess because it sounds like we're adding people when we're really not. We're just maintaining.
Advance hire?
Yeah, replacement hires is kind of but yes, and I appreciate the council and the city manager supporting that program because it is keeping up with where we are now. We're just not adding any additional positions.
Right. What was the average overtime each firefighter worked this year for coverage because of shortages of manpower? And the fire season that we had, which was a pretty aggressive one.
I couldn't give you, and I can get back to you on Friday with that number, that exact number, because I don't have an average per firefighter. I believe our total overtime budget is about 1.3 million, 1.3 to 1.5, something like that. Maybe the finance people know that off the top of my head, or off the top of their head, but I can get a per firefighter.
So that's about 8 firefighters.
Actually, a little more than that, maybe 10, but yeah.
Chief Soto, you still here? Are we keeping up with your retirees?
Yeah, for attrition hire, we are.
Okay, and what was your overtime this year? Not overtime for special events, overtime for shortage coverage.
We don't have a lot of overtime for shortage coverage. Most of our overtime is related to special events.
Okay, so what we do, if you haven't got enough guys, you just run with a shorter crew.
Correct.
So how many times have we had that happen? That we had to run a district that should have 8 people in it with 4 or?
Quite a bit.
So, I mean, we continue to say that we support public safety, and when we're working our firefighters into the dirt because we haven't got enough people to cover the shifts on straight time. The emergency situations aside, where we have people that go to California for long-term and fight firefighters for our neighbors, but I know that I hit the fire stations quite frequently, and it's funny that these guys bid shifts at these fire stations, and I can tour 4 fire stations and find the same firefighter at every one of those stations because he's working overtime to cover because somebody's on vacation, somebody's sick, or somebody's off on a fire somewhere and he's got to cover because of the shortage of manpower to cover these stations. And that's what's going to kill our firefighters. It isn't gonna be a fire. It's gonna be the fact that they are not gonna be ready to go to work because they're working too much. So, yeah, I think that it's of ultimate importance that we continue to staff these police and fire agencies so that we don't have a problem with not having manpower where we need it, that's fresh and ready to do the job. And these two chiefs do an excellent job. They've got excellent teams working behind them. And I haven't got anything but praise for the men and women of our police and fire departments. But we can't expect them to do everything with nothing. And if we don't continue increasing staffing for those two departments so we can get them safe, then we're failing this whole city. And there's a lot of asks in this budget that we can live without. The one thing we can't live without is that policeman or that firefighter that doesn't go home because he has a problem on the job that could have been prevented by having appropriate staffing. With that said, we've got some manpower staffing here that comes out of street fund and sewer and stuff that's a no-brainer. Those are funds, dedicated funds. Street fund, not so much. Building permit fund and the sewer fund are dedicated. Those staffings are separate from our general fund, so we don't have as much problem with approving those staffing levels as long as that funding's in those funds. But when we look at general fund staffing, we have to look at our public safety people and make sure that they come home safe every day first.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, I
Councilwoman
would,
Dewar.
to follow up on Councilman McKenzie, I was wondering if our Chief Soto could come back up. And just tell us what your goal would be with these new officers. I think it was 16 in here. You know, is it spread around? Is it certain areas that are issues?
Well, I think that it's no secret that we've experienced in our city a great amount of growth. And keeping up with that growth, I have some stats prepared for Friday to dive in a little bit more into some of the challenges that all the departments in this in our city face. But the calls for service, when you're talking about specifically for police, calls with RPD on scene in 2016 were 120,201. In 2017, 141,087. So you're looking at an additional 20,000 calls where RPD is on scene. And we appreciate the efforts of this council and our mayor and our city manager in building those numbers. But we are being very creative in how we are spreading those resources around. We've looked at a whole bunch of different areas to where we can free up our sworn officers. But we have a lot of challenges throughout the department. We have civilian staff that has to do the work on the back end. When the officers go out and do all this work, it creates more work. So it's challenging, but the men and women of that organization are the most dedicated people I know, and they do so.
Well, I'll just build on what Councilman McKenzie said, is that I believe that our firefighters and our police officers do a fantastic job, especially given the staffing levels, the understaffing levels at two stations, the understaffing levels that you have where you show us charts saying, you know, we have as many people as we had 20 or 30 years ago. So, I mean, that's not a way to have a growing city. And in that, much of the development in the last 3 to 5 years has been in South Meadows, an area that is in my ward. I have personally some awareness of those calls that both of you have received, but particularly you in that area. I think some of the older areas, maybe more calls to the fire. But these newer homes, you know, a lot of people are moving. They want to be safe, so they're moving to gated communities, and they don't understand that that is an illusion of safety often. One of the other challenges, and I've already talked to you about this even earlier today, is that the speed on our roads is often too high in some of the newer developments. And I'm looking at Veterans Parkway, which we're about to have the Southeast Connector finished. It's going to tie into Veterans. Right now, people are going 55 on Veterans. The posted speed's 45. A lot of people that live there think it should be 35. You and I talked right before this meeting how many resources you're deploying just to issue speeding tickets. And we just had a death this last weekend of someone just trying to pull out onto Steamboat Parkway. And I'll be going out there tomorrow to inspect the site. I have sent so many Reno direct requests over to our traffic department and public works, our roads department. And one of the things I think is trying to get, this is going to continue to be a problem. We've had citizens, over 500 citizens, sign a petition in the South Reno, I'll call it, South Reno area, saying they want to improve safety on the roads and for drivers and pedestrians. They want everything. They want traffic lights. They want overhead lights. They want crossings, lighted crossings, pedestrian activated crossings, speed bumps, four-way stops. I mean, the list is endless that I have received. And I have talked to, just yesterday, we had a development come to my ward, my NAB, which is a brand-new development that's even bigger than Stonegate as proposed, 5,000 homes. And one of the big points I made to them is, as you are designing your development, you have got to figure out speeds on these roads, put in the overhead lights in the lighting and the crossings when you build the development, not rely on the city of Reno to come back in at the end, on the back end, and be putting all this infrastructure in on our general fund, or going to RTC. Either way, they'll help on some things. But we not only have a structural problem in our budget. I think we have a structural problem on our streets, and I think this structural problem has to be addressed in community development as these developments are being planned, so that we are, again, not coming back around and having to fix it all. And also the amount of time that the requests I've sent to you for speeding enforcement on some of these sections of road, that takes away from solving crimes. So it's just, it's for right now, but it's really a plea for, to Eric, long-term, to be looking at our standards for our developments so that we don't continue to add to our burden here at the city of Reno.
Yes, ma'am. And I just want to make a point to this entire council, because every department is lacking in resources. I want to bring attention to how all of our city employees really work so well with each other. I call code enforcement, I call traffic, I call public works, I call fire, and I use their resources, they use our resources. That was something that city manager brought to our attention right when she began, was using each other and these resources, and it's worked out very well. I mean, we understand, everybody understands that there is a need for more employees,
Yeah.
But we also have budget limitations, so
Well, to your
we'll
point.
continue to do that.
I mean, to your point, and I'm not mad at them. I want them to learn from your experience, what you're out seeing every day, whether it's horses being killed, people being killed, near misses, whatever. And is there a way that we can embed the public safety improvements? But I hear what you're also saying, that takes people at community development to more thoroughly evaluate these applications. So one way is to do a different standard, so the applicant themselves has to do better, and then we have to have people on the back end to review those proposals. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing, that to our attention and making us aware of these areas where they are challenges, and we're trying to find fixes for those
Okay.
challenges.
Well, thank you.
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. Chief, can you come up? Chief Cochran, sorry. Okay, the additional fire personnel that you're requesting, those are to fully staff 19 and 7?
And 7.
And
Station
7.
on Skyline. So there were 17 positions there, and let me just clarify that because I described 15. The other 2 are a fire mechanic and an EMS captain, which is administrative personnel.
Okay.
So that's how we got from
So-
15 to 17.
So for Friday, for Station 19, I know that we went up in Somerset some 5 years with it being browned out. Let's just say it was largely closed. Due to the recession, I know all the cutbacks that had to occur there. We also know we have to crawl before we can walk, before we can run. I would like to know, that station has had the 2-person crew in it for at least, year and a half?
Yeah, about a
now?
year and a half.
About a year and a half now?
Yeah.
What we're seeing for calls, if we could get that on Friday.
Absolutely.
I know we staffed it with a 2-person crew because a significant majority of the calls are medical out there. It is a senior community with Del Webb. So I'd like to know kind of what our calls for service related to fire with Station 19 as the response, And so I can get an idea of, kind of where we're headed with staffing at that station versus calls for service at that station.
Absolutely, yeah, that's no problem. I won't, I have that on my desk. I won't give you a guesstimate. I'll give you an exact number on Friday. The one thing I would add to that, though, as we know, 4 persons is standard. That's what we shoot for, and I know that's your goal. That station, Station 19, as well as Station 7, are a little bit, not a little bit, they're on the edge. They're right butting up there against Collin, they're butting up against Verdi, where we have that interface problem, and that's going to be your first line of defense. So when you hear the call volume, and it'll be low relative to other stations, like down here at Station 1, but the threat is very real too. And I know you're aware of that, and I just want to
No,
say that for
and
the
I will
public,
tell you
yeah.
this, the Somerset community is very appreciative to have some staffing at that station. The goal is ultimately to have it fully staffed. I'm just trying to have some numbers on Friday so I can
Absolutely,
be
no
better
problem.
informed. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think that when you make those numbers up, a clarification you need to put in is the fact that if Moana Station's on a fire over towards Station 7 right now, if they have to have an engine for backup, it's got to come from Station 12 or from 21 or someplace else, because 7's not there to come and back it up with an engine. And those backup calls, that's why our overlap of our fire department, our stations is so important, is so the closest next station can be there to back them up when you have a fire. And I think that if you look at those numbers where the backup had to come further because that station didn't have an engine company, that it'll be more telling than just what the medical call numbers are. Chief Soto brought up an interesting point on calls, and I was real remiss in the fact, forget to mention the fact, our dispatch handled 360,000 calls this year. That's 2 calls every 3 minutes that they had to take through our dispatch center, and that dispatch center is sorely understaffed. And a lot of that isn't because they haven't got openings there to fill. It's because that's such a hard job to fill. It takes a very special person to be a dispatcher and to survive at that job for very long. And that department's being plagued with retirement as well. And their staffing is suffering because of that and the fact that we haven't been able to fill the positions we did authorize there. And I see that they're asking for some more positions. And another place that I don't think we can ever catch up with staffing is with our dispatchers, because how hard it is to find somebody that can actually do that job. It looks like an easy job, but you just got to sit behind that console for about 5 minutes and you're done. It's not a very easy job. So.
If I may add to that, and thank you for bringing that up about, I think you've heard me talk about it last Wednesday. It's not the first call, it's the next call that we need to be aware of as well. And Station 7 is a great example of that. District 3 is the neighboring district, which will support them. The second busiest district in the city. So you're going to empty that district to cover what is really an understaffed station. So thank you. And I'll get all those numbers for you. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. This is always such a difficult process because you always feel like you're choosing one over the other, and I know many of us have a lot of heartburn over being able to sort of balance that, right? First of all, I do want to say to our staff, you guys are incredible. Anytime I reach out to you, you guys go above and beyond, and back to Chief Soto's comments of how everyone works together. It's pretty miraculous what you guys do with so much less. And, I've said this for a long time, it's been so challenging because we are playing years of catch up from the recession. We really are. And I think we went through, 700 layoffs? I mean, this council didn't, but the council before us had to make some really difficult decisions. And at that time, our staff really stepped up in every way possible. And so, and this council has been very vocal about public safety and the importance of that. And I've always said a prosperous city is a safe city. And that truly is, I can't even begin to tell you how important that is, and not to mention with the growth that we're experiencing, like Councilmember McKenzie said, and Councilwoman Dewar, that's where the challenge really comes in. And I think that we have to pay strict attention to that and make sure that public safety does have all the resources that you guys can we can possibly give you. And so I guess my message is, to this council, and we've always said this, that public safety is going to remain a priority. And I don't think that will be any different. But again, a safe city is a prosperous city. And think about that, because, we talk about tourism, we talk about our residents and how they want to shape our city. And I constantly hear about police and fire and EMS. I mean, wherever I go, people are very concerned about that. And we've always said it's important for our residents to shape the city, so I want to make sure we hear them loud and clear. That is very important to me. And again, going back to the growth and being able to manage that, because we won't have a great quality of life if we don't do that. And we also won't have tourism that comes here that we rely on heavily, correct? I do think this is very minor in the sense, but it's just one of those pieces, and I'm going to bring it up. And this is separate, but when we look at doing some creative things, I commend Councilwoman Dewar for coming up with, some ideas. I mean, whether, it's DOA or not, these are the kinds of discussions we need to have. And just at a quick glance, I know for those of you that sit on the special events committee, looking at that, we've had discussion about consolidating it because, I know that different entities give out different amounts of money, and I think if it was consolidated, everyone can be on the same page to, be a little bit more, aware of where that money goes. And I think one of the things I'm going to look at differently for sure this year is room tax. There are cities that look at that for other venues, whether it's homeless initiatives, and really looking at a different perspective. So that's one thing I think that we have to do a deep dive in when it comes to looking at a room tax. This is never easy. It's really, really challenging. And so, again, I want to thank our team at the City of Reno. You guys have all been amazing. And it's so hard to pick and choose. It really is. But for me, and every year, and I continue to hear it from every, all my constituents, is public safety. So we're going to have to really focus on the public safety side of things. So anyway, with that being said, any more questions? Councilwoman Breckus.
Yeah, I just a few questions. So I have the CAFR here, and I am a little confused because the property tax last 10-year fiscal years unaudited shows the June 30, 2017 at 64 million, but you're only showing it 50 million. Is this just not the right reading on the CAFR?
Jill Olson, for the record, the CAFR includes the street fund.
Oh, under property
portion of
tax,
the property
it's got the
taxes.
override. Okay, that's great, thank you. I guess a couple other questions is, I guess we just had a fire down at where we keep the fleet, the impounded vehicles and all, and I was wondering, did we take care of that this last budget year, or is that's not shown as a critical need? But I had heard some time ago that we felt for evidence purposes we were in trouble if we didn't have that area secured. Is where are we at on that project?
Jill Olson again. It continues to be an item in the CIP request list.
Okay.
And we've been putting $50,000 toward
Okay.
that issue so that the police department can do as much as they can with that little bit of funding.
Okay. And then the $1.2 million that we sold the Cyan property for, how's that plugged into this 18-19 budget?
Thank goodness I can turn around and look at Gayla. It is included in the one-time requests for that $1,140,000 that we've listed.
The
in the
CIP?
slides for CIP.
Okay. And I guess, I have some specific questions about the budget, some departments, or our city hall elevators safe and what's going on with the zoning code, but I can save those to Friday, right? Because the department heads will come up. Okay, so just, in summary, you asked for our priorities. We're kind of broad here, and my priority is really to do what's right with a long view. I think this is a very honest presentation of our situation, and if it meets a no-growth budget, in my mind, then that's where we need to be. I don't think we need to compound things and make irresponsible short-term decisions to fill needs. If we have to wave the white flag and say, we're a creature of the state and we're in rough shape, we're not corresponding to the local economic conditions, then I think we need to do that. And I'll tell you, in researching municipal bankruptcies, pensions are on the table. And so when I hear this for the employees, yeah, they're going to be in stressful work conditions and because they're understaffed, but we go to a place we don't want to go. In 20 years, when they're 20 years out of retirement, we could be hurting them even worse. And that's why that's a consideration for me, for our employees, and I think that should be in mind. And then, the growth. Obviously, we had a big growth discussion last meeting, and I was not going to be on that our manager talks about being smarter, operating smarter, and growth decisions like the one that was made last week are not smarter. They stretch us thinner, and that was a large part of where I landed last week. So just to bring that back, I think that if we can't add positions, we need to be making other decisions to be smarter too. Thank you.
All right,
One
Councilwoman
more
Dewar.
thing. Just for Friday, if you guys could bring back the assumptions, that would be really helpful. What are the growth assumptions? What's the, the property tax number that you're using to estimate, and so on. If we could see the assumptions, that really gives us a better feel for the whole sort of what it's built on, this budget. And also, I guess I'll ask Madam Manager, so would it be more appropriate, I guess, to talk about, let's say, what the next largest budget request after public safety is for public works? Would it be good to save that for Friday conversation or for today, or just to get an understanding what we're planning?
Yes, Councilwoman Dewar. On Friday, we will be having each of the departments get up and explain a little bit about their core services. It's going to be a little bit high level at that point because we do have more budget workshops after this, but each one should explain what their core services are, where they see themselves going and their department going strategically over the next couple of years, and then kind of like a high level on some of their PCRs.
Okay. Well, I'd especially like to know, again, this is the third highest position request. I'm sure it's very supportable. I mean, it's all good stuff. I just want to know what it is, so if we do approve it, I know kind of what we're buying, expectation-wise, in terms of services for the city.
All right,
Madam
Councilmember McKenzie?
Other thing that I'd like to see is where we can go with fees. We've got room in our licensing fees, if we've got room to charge more for development applications, et cetera, to look at the revenue side too, see if there's any way we can increase revenues.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so moving along, Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, I will look to finance staff to identify if there's a separate presentation within your strategies. We've covered that. With that, we are on to general public comment, which I have none registered with me.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Any further comments? Welcome, by the way. Nothing like diving right in, huh? I think you did a very good job. Thank you. All right.
Madam Mayor, with that, we have the last item on the agenda today, which is a motion for adjournment.
All right, I'm going to hand that over to Councilmember McKenzie. Wouldn't be the same if you didn't. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.